We're here to help. This technology is moving so fast, and I would say embrace it, give it a shot. We do see sometimes there's people who don't want to try the new thing. They want to keep doing the same thing that they've done over and over and over again. And while that is okay, trying something new and using a new technique, being open to that can open you up to other things as well. And you might find that that is something that you value and are interested yourself. You might enjoy it. So I would say just be open to trying something new.
Hello, and welcome to The Clear Voice, brought to you by Clear Career Professionals. I'm your host, James Groom. What if a city could inspect roads, drainage, tanks, creeks, utilities, and hard-to-reach infrastructure faster, safer, and with more detail than a traditional field survey without breaking the bank? That's the conversation we hope to get to on this episode. Before we get into the tech, I'll introduce our guest. From Birkhoff, Hendricks, and Carter, we have Craig Kerkhoff. That's a very big tongue twister there, Craig. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
You know, you've graduated from just a guest, and now you're a friend of the show.
I'm a sophomore now, yeah. Got the freshman lumps out of the way, and we're coming back.
Well, we appreciate having you on. If you haven't listened to Craig's other episode, I don't remember what number it is off the top of my head, but we talked a long time about engineering, and I think a lot of engineers watched that because, you know, it did pretty well.
Oh, good. Glad to hear I've got the face for radio. We'll try to do it again.
And today you're bringing us one of your trusted colleagues, Robert Hendricks, who is a doctor. And I guess we're going to find out what kind of doctor he is here in a minute. He's with BHC as well. Robert, welcome to The Clear Voice.
Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you. And since you're the star of the show today, Craig said we had to talk to you about all the things that you've got going on and get us up to speed. I think first we kind of need to know what your background is and what you do there at BHC and how you even got there.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a geologist by training. So kind of an odd fit here for BHC, but throughout my geology career, my focus has been remote sensing. So gathering data from a standoff distance and then using that data for geologic applications. But the gathering of the data and the techniques associated with that, whether it's for geology or engineering, the process is nearly identical. So really, once you kind of understand that, you can apply it to many different types of applications.
How long have you been with BHC and what got you interested in working in the engineering side?
I've been with BHC since last September. So not long, but I've had quite a long history with the firm throughout my entire life. You could almost say I've been around BHC my whole life, really.
Your last name's Hendricks, and one of the names in BHC is Hendricks. What's the connection, if any?
That Hendricks is my father. He was a partner here and retired really almost right before I came on. He worked here his entire career, so I've went up to the offices when I was a kid, and I've heard about it my entire life. So, yeah.
That's awesome having a legacy employee, Craig. Does he have a big head about him, or are you able to tame him?
If he hadn't been around the firm, I'm not sure this would have worked out. You know, Robert and I have known each other for a better part of 15 years. Clearly, the majority that's not been in professional capacity, just, you know, through the familiar connections and just the mutual respect. So having that underlying just relationship from known time and then joining this journey together, I think has been really helpful.
And you have a nickname for Dr. H?
I do. I don't know if he likes it. So I call him the mad scientist. I'm mad because I think I make him mad, and then because I think a bunch of random things, and he has to go figure it out. So that's what we stick with at the moment until he hits me.
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about LiDAR technology and how you guys are using it. But is that why you brought Robert on, or is it other things?
That was the initial perspective. Honestly, we didn't start talking to him with the idea of bringing him on. We did attempted to do some research internally here at BHC, just LiDAR and drones. I mean, they're the buzzwords. And we did a little bit of research and realized very, very quickly of how much we didn't know and how daunting that task was. Robert, knowing through his father still working at the time, you know, was doing some LiDAR work in different applications, but similar work at another company at the time. And Robert just came in to be helpful a couple of times. He just sat in just out of graciousness, trying to help us, point us in the right direction and give us some information. And every time he talked, I got nothing more than questions as opposed to answers, more things I didn't know. And after about 3 or 4 times of that, we just kind of sat down and, hey, why don't we? And there's some hemming and hawing, some careful consideration, but we're very, very glad and very, very happy that he jumped on board. And he is a partner now. He is in a short period of time, he's earned it all stuff, and he is a partner in the firm, and we're very happy about that.
I'm glad we don't have to change the name of the firm.
Well, the Kerkhoff thing is getting confusing, so we'll see what happens.
Craig, for the audience, can you briefly tell us, outside of what we're going to talk about today, what else does BHC do for municipalities?
Yeah, so the elevator pitch, so we don't have to take up the whole podcast, is basically we're a municipal engineering firm specifically. So civil is the overall umbrella, but we focus on municipalities or the public sector work. We don't do any private work, so that kind of gives us a unique niche as we work with all of our clients that we don't have any conflicts of interest or we're on both sides of the table. And we do everything from acting city engineer through day-to-day conversations, help, CIP projects, master plan studies, kind of the gamut of whatever a city needs. We're relationship focused, so we do a little bit outside of North Texas, but that's just existing relationships that we've had. And then those folks have moved on in their careers in other places and asked us to come help them from time to time. And so we do venture here and there, but it's all relationship focused.
I know if you go back and listen to the first podcast we had on with Craig, Mike talks a lot about that relationship and how important it was for him as he moved from the North Texas area down to Wimberley and needed some help, and all that Craig did to help him out. I think for free too, right, Craig? Isn't that what you said?
We never actually got to send an invoice for that, but that's okay, right? That's what relationships are. You help people you like, and you have relationships with, and there's a lot of respect for. And at the end of the day, everything will work out. We don't focus on the financial transactions or treat everybody as such. We focus on the people, and if you do the right thing for the right reasons, it'll work out at the end of the day.
Dr. H, when you're thinking about all the schooling that you went to, was that the original focus? And when you're thinking about engineering, especially for cities, since it's a people-focused, relationship-based thing, and you're basically from the private sector helping public servants, do you feel better about doing that work? Does it make it more appealing, I guess?
Yeah, I would say so. Like I said, originally, there is a lot of carryover from the science that I was doing before I got here to what we're doing here. But as far as working in this sector, I do find it interesting, very interesting. I like to tell people that what we're working on and with, it might not be the coolest. It might not be the thing that you think about when you're looking at engineering. A lot of people look at the big mega projects or buildings and stuff like that. But the civil part of that, where, to me at least, the providing water and getting rid of waste is so incredibly important to not just our lifestyle now, but like just civilization in general. Like that concept allowed us to go from living in huts to living in these cities. We're a part of that whole history. So I find that really interesting in working in this field.
Well, it's funny that you talk about ancient history, because when Craig pitched this originally and talking about the LiDAR, I remember reading news stories, and I think even more have come out since that last podcast, where they're using the same exact technology that we're going to talk about today in South America and Central America, and being able to penetrate jungle canopies and discover ancient cities that have been covered over by jungle for hundreds of years. When Craig started talking about the technology, I was like, oh, I've seen those things. So that's the same technology that you guys are using in municipalities.
Exact same.
So tell us a little bit about it. How long has that been something that we could access, and how you guys are using it over there at BHC?
I mean, the technology's been around for a while, but like any technology, it's just advanced and grown, and, well, actually probably the opposite of grown. The devices have gotten smaller, lighter, more powerful. So the technology that we're speaking of is LiDAR, laser mapping, laser scanning. When I first started, these units were giant, almost kind of Christmas tree looking things that were attached to car batteries and had to sit in one place for 3 or 4 hours to conduct one scan. Now they're the size of a softball and can be put on a drone and flown out for an hour without needing any kind of backup and collecting more data than we've ever thought possible.
When you say collecting data, what is the end result when you run the drone?
The end result is what we call a point cloud, which is just a 3D matrix of reflection points. So you can think of the LiDAR as quite literally is the exact same thing as your laser tape measure that you might have at home. I don't know if you have one of those, but where you kind of set it against one wall and you point it at another and it gives you a distance, right? It's doing that by measuring how long it takes for that laser beam to go from your device, bounce off the wall, and then come back. It's a sophisticated timer. It measures two-way travel time of a beam of light. And because the speed of light is constant, and we know what it is in an atmosphere, we can actually calculate that distance based on the time it takes for that beam to go down and back. So the LiDAR device is that, but it's doing that millions of times per second and not just in one orientation. It's doing it in multiple orientations. So it's taking all these measurements all the way around it. As a result, you end up getting a bunch of XYZ locations that are corresponding to that laser's reflection. And there's so many of them and it's so dense, we call it a point cloud. So it's almost like you're traveling through fog or a haze. You know how everything kind of looks fuzzy, but you can kind of tell what the objects are. That's what it looks like. That's the result, is this 3D model that is XYZ, very, very accurate XYZ points measurements from the device.
Craig, I just want to make sure that I'm collecting enough information and translating it correctly. For cities, you're creating a 3D map. It looks like SimCity or Grand Theft Auto when you're looking down on it. With a similar device, like I don't know much about tape measures, but I've used a LiDAR for police work and it measures speed and distance.
Yep. So really what this is, I mean, we're not doing anything different as a firm. We're still an engineering firm, but the way we do it's changing, right? So this LiDAR, it's helping replace the easiest part's the field survey. We got the field survey crew, the traditional, the guy, the rod, the field. Takes a lot of time. You get a lot less information. So this is basically to create that field survey in the simplest sense is one thing we're doing with it. And yeah, it's, Robert, we're up to what, about 800 points per square meter on average is our density.
For the ground, yeah.
Yeah, so if we're flying for a road or a sewer line or for a project, for every square meter, we're getting over 800 spot shots just for that square meter. So the accuracy and just the density is amazing. But at the same time, I don't have to have a guy standing in the middle of the road getting those spot shots, right? So I'm not having a guy out there in the way of traffic and having a truck set up in the middle of the road. And it's a lot faster. What used to take weeks of field survey time with a traditional crew, we can do in less than a day flying, and then we'll bring it back to processing. So all in takes less than a week what would take 2 to 4 before. So it's kind of the holy grail of faster, safer, more accurate, all the above.
And so when you get done with a field survey, all you end up with is basically a drawing, right?
Yeah, so all the engineering, it all starts with existing conditions. Like everything we engineer, it has to work with existing conditions. And so this really helps with just evaluating, getting that information in-house and getting it ready to work faster. Again, if you've got longer projects or very detailed projects, the traditional methods just take a long time to get all the information just in-house. And then once you in-house, you had to have a CAD technician or somebody process all that data, which again took a lot of time for them to work through all that. So this really finds a lot of efficiency, getting a lot more information and a lot faster. So once you have the existing conditions, we can start laying out the road, the wall line, or whatever it needs to be. But it all starts with the built environment as it is today. So it's trying to get that in-house faster and make more efficient progress for all of our clients.
So instead of just ending up with the drawing that you get from the field survey, though, you're going to have, I guess you'd have pictures, you'd have a 3D model, but you still end up with also what you would get out of a field survey. You could still just have the drawing that you need to do what you need to do.
It's a digital clone is what we're making, really. So we're taking the real world and turning it into ones and zeros.
The real benefit for this for cities is, we have a variety of projects going on now. It's having it in this format. It doesn't have to be just for one-time use. If we were doing it for a road, we'd go survey for that road, and then that file would be for that project. And so if you had anything around there, you could try to go get into it and get the plans out and see, well, this 3D model or the point cloud was processed. That data is still good for any other use you may want in the area that we've collected. Unless it's been a long period of time or something's been built. those still existing conditions, that data still has value to the city other than just that one single time use.
One of the things when we were talking about it, I remember watching you work a project. I didn't have anything to do with it, but watching you work a project in a city that we were both working for, and there was surveying that needed to be done across railroad tracks, and that took a particularly long time because you have to go get special permissions and there's insurance requirements and all this. Does the drone wipe away a lot of that red tape?
On that specific project, it would have. Yeah, that particular project, it took us about a year just to get the field survey crew out there, just due to the permits from that particular railroad company. I still have my safety badge. I'd take a safety training course and get verified and passed, and they had to get the rail master out there and block the one train a day that may or may not have come through. So that was extraordinarily painful just to get that existing information. Where this has, with the heights and speeds they're flying it, that wouldn't have been an issue. We would have that data collected in less than a week versus the year it took us just to get out there.
I'm sure it wasn't cheap to have to go through classes and all the extra time that you had to cut through that red tape.
No, I mean, it took a lot of time to do that. But again, it was an important project for the city that just, it took a long time just to get off the ground due to that encumbrance, and is out of any of our control. Whereas this kind of removes some of those variables. It's still safe, right? We're not risking anything, but we're able to get that data and start the project just a lot faster. Robert mentioned the field of view. We can find the public right of way, and it has, depending on the height and the speed, it can get data beyond that to a certain degree. So, we still need the traditional crew as far as finding property corners or getting things below ground like manholes. But if we need to get going on a project pretty quickly, this is a good way to get data, outside the right of ways a little bit if we need, without actually encroaching upon those parcels.
So if I called you guys and I was kind of in a rush to get things done, and obviously depending on your schedule, but how soon could you come out and do an average mile of roadway or whatever, like from start to finish, my phone call to you providing me the data, how long would that take?
Well, depending on how much you make fun of me on this podcast, that'll depend a little bit. But I mean, honestly, you can depending on schedule, the mile of road and good weather, all those type of things, a week, 2 tops.
Versus what would it be in the traditional means?
A mile of road, if you didn't need anything outside the right of way requiring permission to survey letters, you're probably looking at a month and a half by the time you do the field survey crew out there to get all the spot shots and process that. Month and a half, maybe more.
That's a crazy savings of time.
Yeah, and again, it's crazy savings of time, but also if it's a road, if it's a traditional way, our guys got to be out there in the middle of that road taking spot shots to get that information. So it's blocking traffic, the safety concern, all these things, and he's getting spot shots on a 10, 20-foot grid, whereas we're getting a lot more information and nobody's in the middle of the road, causing a safety concern. So got a lot of good benefits to it.
Robert, obviously if they're shooting these LiDARs through jungle canopy, obviously it's going to work in the city. I don't really understand how I can see through there if it's a laser. I guess that's just based on the vegetation versus like a hard object.
In some sense, yeah. Part of it is that there's so many measurements being taken. So you can imagine looking up through a canopy and it's mostly green, but you can still see little bits of the sky and the sun, right? There's always a little bit that kind of comes through. So there's the beam actually finds those holes and is able to reflect off the ground on that. In addition, again, looking up at the canopy, you'll see a leaf maybe, and then the sun kind of coming through it. The light can penetrate those kind of thin barriers like that. So the beam will go through, it will reflect off the leaf, but then a portion of it will also continue down through and then reflect off the ground, or maybe reflect off another leaf and then kind of portion of it come down and reflect off the ground. So we can actually, instead of just measuring one reflection from that beam, we can measure multiple reflections. So that allows us to get the information kind of through like a tree canopy type environment. So definitely it works well in the city built up environment here, going through those types of objects. Now, when we hit solid objects like a wall or a building, it won't go through that. But anything that light can penetrate through, or whether it's completely opaque or somewhat transparent, right? Anything that light can go through, the laser will do the same. So if we do a building, we will image the glass, it will bounce off that, but then we'll actually get reflections from the interior of the building as well. It can go through that, and you can use that data not just the ground data, but the tree data too. So you can use that to look at tree density and tree location and that sort of thing.
What's the coolest real world example that you guys have used this for so far?
For me, I don't know. We've done a couple of elevated storage tanks. I think those projects are pretty neat just because we've used this technology in a variety of different ways. So LiDAR itself can kind of be fielded multiple different ways. You can do it from the air, from like a helicopter or airplane. We use a drone. It's a little bit more controlled. We can get into smaller spaces. You can also do it from the ground, either as a terrestrial unit that just sits in one location, or you can mount it to a car or a train and drive around with it. There's also technology called SLAM LiDAR that basically it maps where it creates a LiDAR point cloud and locates itself. So you can kind of wander around with the device and create a map. And that's really great for enclosed spaces. So we have a LiDAR unit that can kind of do multiple different types of scans depending on what it's mounted to. So for those elevated tanks, we mapped the exterior with a drone and then took that same unit off, mounted it on a little stick, and then walked inside the tank and then kind of went up into the different levels that they had and mapped the interior. So then we took those separate scans, and because there's common points in them, we can mesh them together. So we got the exterior of a site as well as the interior of a site all within one point cloud.
And what does somebody do with a 3D model of inside and outside of their elevated tank?
Well, for that one, we were looking at the tank for a recoat. So that was why we were looking at the outside. The interior, I like to have that because it gives you, like I said, a more complete model of what the entire tank looks like. I don't know why. I've done this for other projects and conditions and stuff like that. But for me, like, I don't know why, but I really like looking at walls. I'm very interested in wall thicknesses and how consistent they are across an area. So having that outside and then inside scan where I can actually then determine how thick a wall is and look how it varies, not just if it's leaning one way or bulging out. Is it actually thicker or is it, bulged out? I don't know why. I just enjoy that kind of stuff. So having that was good for me. But then we also are able to use that as a record of what the equipment is in there, the position of that equipment. So it can serve as kind of a supplement to like our as-built drawings. I think in addition, guess since hopefully the people who don't own the tank don't hear us, like they were using it as a storage facility. And I think part of the idea was to show them like just how much stuff they have just crammed in there, and maybe kind of like with my daughter, like maybe you should clean your room if you step back and look how much stuff is actually in here. There's multiple ways you can use the same data set. And again, that's one of the benefits with this is it's digital. You may collect it for one reason, but it's very easy to share with people who might want to use it for another application.
As the technology improves and we build these things out, like there's other applications, whether it's GIS based and whatnot. Hey, we have to scale real life data. Now you can attach to other data as opposed to trying to dig through files or antiquated systems or things that are in different locations. You can start to build out some of those things.
If you're able to measure the wall thickness, I assume that you can look for structural problems. How close of a measurement are you getting?
That is one of the things that I used to do at a previous firm before I came to BHC. And that really depends on the scan itself and the type of LiDAR that's being used. But air is down to tenths or even hundredths of an inch, depending on the system and the type of scan that you do. So it's extremely accurate.
Were you taking all these points and putting it to make a 3D model? It sounds like a lot of data. So what do you do with that? You just give them a flash drive when you get done and say, have a good day?
No, that's getting into an interesting, more of a governance topic of that. Honestly, we've had to build up our servers here a little bit more and going to continue that one. One thing we're working through a couple cities, contracts we've got going is right now, because this is a lot of data, it's going to be continue gathering more. We want to make sure the city's protected. So we're trying to, in the governance aspect, where the contract is the city personnel, employees always have access if they want to see this and have questions and work with it and whatnot. But right now we're owning the data because there's some software we've developed that's kind of intellectual property of our own. And that way trying to protect it for if the city gets a public information request or whatnot to share all this data, try to keep some things that maybe they don't want all the public to have to be out there. But it is a lot of data.
You said they can use this down the road. You're shooting wider than the project usually, and then they can come back and grab that for something else that they may not even have on their radar yet.
Absolutely. And they're great examples. We had a project with about 7,000 feet of water line. And again, traditionally, it would have been a couple of months to get the surface by the time we get, we mail out letters to all the property owners, make sure our survey crew can get out there. We got the contract on a Monday. We flew it on a Tuesday. We processed it Wednesday and Thursday. Friday was a day off. And a week later, we had the surface and we were laying out lines. So what would have been a couple months or more, we were a week in. But again, that data is there, and there's an adjacent development that's also for the public sector somebody else is doing. The client asked, hey, can we send that information over to them? I think they were going to put a turn lane or something on this road, and hey, the data is still good. It's easily transferable, but you come down the road, like it can be used for any purpose, whether we're channels, creeks, roads, sidewalks, it's always there.
Robert, when we talked previously about this, one of the things you said I thought was very interesting was, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but you talked about collecting data and moving from data to information to understanding. Talk a little bit about that as far as this topic, and then have you ever connected that to how we make decisions just in the workplace about lots of things, personnel and leadership issues?
Very deep question there. I was all good, and then you took this left turn of like philosophicalness. So no, that's great. I'd like to talk about that hierarchy of data, right? Because data really is just ones and zeros. That's all it is. And so I think it's kind of important to think about it in that sense where it's raw, right? In and amongst itself, it's not useful, right? So once we organize data, we organize those ones and zeros, that gives us information, right? Information is organized data, and we can use that to determine conditions and characterizations of different things. When we start getting packets of information and organizing that, that's what gives us that understanding. And that understanding allows us to infer what may have happened in the past and predict what might happen in the future. I like to try to tell people about this because these point clouds are beautiful, but they are just information at this point. The actual file is the data, right? That's when we process it and turn it into information, right? It's integrating this into other sources of information, perhaps a geospatial database, perhaps it's a design drawing, perhaps it's another remote sensing techniques such as imagery or thermal imaging or geophysical stuff. And when we start taking all that information and organizing that, that's when we get that understanding, right? I don't like to operate with just one packet of information. I like to try to get as much as I possibly can. How does that go to organization of a firm or I think it's kind of the same way, trying to make sure that I think number one is that information everyone kind of knows what's going on and understands kind of that packet of information that they can provide for that long-term goal of the understanding. So I think that's about as deep as I can get with that like part of it. But
you did great.
Yeah, I think that whole hierarchy is always very interesting to me. And I always try to think about when I'm looking at something like, is this data or is this information? Like where are we at with this level so that I can know whether do I need to start organizing this more or are we good with what we have,
Yeah, once you get to understanding, then you can start making decisions. But before you get there, you're kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah, completely agree there. Maybe we should add another level to that, to decisions and all, and then rethinking about it at midnight. I don't know.
Yeah, I was expanding upon that a little bit. I mean, and to Robert's point, as far as the information to understanding, there's kind of two aspects of this, but they meld into one, right? I mean, the first aspect is that we're in the client service industry. That's a lot of our job is, hey, our clients, our cities call us, they need information, right? They have to make the decision. We don't, but what's going on, what do we recommend? And so conveying that. And then other times it is a design project. We're designing something that is going to get built. And so understanding the client needs, because getting this data, it's not simple. It is complicated. It's kind of confusing. So the processing and getting it in from data to information is not the most simple thing, but trying to remember that we are in the client service business. So we have to be able to communicate in a common language with the people we're serving, right? We can't be just in our own little bubble doing our thing and just sending it out. So I mean, that's when it comes to trying to help people get to understanding, is making sure that, hey, what are we talking about? How do we convey this information where everybody can understand it? Because a lot of times, the cities, they are the ones that have to make those decisions. And if we just send point clouds or just the raw data out, that doesn't help a whole lot. So remembering, hey, we are in the client service business. We're here to serve people. And so make sure we do a great job and make sure that we can communicate with people about what's going on and get them the information they need to make the decisions that they need to make.
We've talked about the speed of this, the safety of this. Also, you're collecting more information that can be used for lots of things, not just that one project potentially. So we've got everything covered, but that means it must be prohibitively expensive versus the traditional methods.
It's not the cheapest thing I've ever come across, no. But we firmly believe in what we're doing and who we are and who we serve. We've made that commitment, bring on Robert, and got some folks working with him. They've been fantastic. We're working on some other ways we can bring value to cities, but keeping that in mind, that we have to try to make it as cost efficient. I mean, it's not much more than a traditional survey crew on an hourly basis. It's getting a lot more information, taking less time, and it's a lot safer. Could we charge more? It's possible, but again, we want to make sure we serve our clients. And it's a newer technology that, again, it's amazing. It's going to get a lot of value to the cities, but it's hard to get cities to pay something that's just not cost efficient, right? Hey, go do something that you don't know how to use it. You've never done it. And so we've really tried to make it as cost efficient as possible, because the real value is in the data and again in the relationships and being helpful to those cities. Because a lot of times, James, you've sat in the chair, you've got to make a decision and you just don't have the information. Well, you don't have a month or 2 months to get the information to make a decision on. And so you make, the best decision you can on what you got. Well, now we have an avenue where it's cost efficient. You can get more data to make the decision in the time frame that's acceptable versus, the months and months.
Do you think cities will start using this to basically map huge sections of cities and look at it from economic development? Is it going to be cost efficient enough to do things like that?
I think it depends on the city's general approach to it. And I can tell you, we've started a couple cities where we are mapping all the roads in those cities. We're doing some analysis for them on those roadways. But again, what we've been open with about and what they realize is that now we've got data that they can use for a variety of purposes for anything else, in addition to just helping them with the roadway evaluation. And then it can grow in any direction from there. We've done some sewer and water master plans for the same communities. And so we start integrating potentially some of those. Or you mentioned economic development. It's coming no matter which way it is. I mean, that's kind of the way the industry, who goes first and to what degree. And there'll be new things coming along that none of us know about today. But I think the value to the city for the way they can organize information, the way they can access it, and they can get to the information they need to make the decisions they want to, is going to increase and make their jobs easier. It's not easy, but less cumbersome just to get the information.
When you said when we prepped for this show that I could ask about AI stuff, but you may tell me that you're not ready to share that yet and we need to come back a third time.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we've got the editing option after this, so that's good news. So we've got a couple options. I feel okay discussing today. We are working on a variety of initiatives that aren't quite operational yet, but they're exciting. They're very promising. At the moment, we have created a pavement condition index for cities where a combination of LiDAR and high-resolution aerial imagery, we can get together the city, define all the different failures and different types of roadways we're looking at, and basically give them that same pavement condition index they're doing traditional methods now. It's through an interactive dashboard where they can actually be customized for each individual city, so they can see it, they can work with it, they understand what it is. It's not just a spreadsheet and a 3-inch thick report, right? But on the back end of that, with those cities, again, we've scanned the whole city. So that pavement condition index, we've built it, we've trained it, validated ourselves. And so that's kind of a proprietary thing that we worked in here. And we've been training our own object identification specifically for cities as well. There's some software that can do some of that today, in my opinion, and the opinions of Craig are his opinions only and don't reflect that disclaimer. but out of the box stuff isn't very good for what cities specifically need. Fire hydrants, manholes, water valves, signs. We've got some object identification specifically to some of that we're working with and building into some of that. So those are operational today. We're working with a couple cities and doing that. And then as we get some more initiatives underway and more operational, we'll be happy to share at that time.
So basically, if a city has a problem that may even touch any of this technology from an engineering firm, they can call you and see what you got on the plate, because it may change from now to next week.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, we're working the variety of cameras and sensors, not just the couple we've spoken of today. And honestly, everything's almost customizable to every city we work with. It's a different situation. They need something different. The way the dashboard looks. So everything we're doing is pretty much unique for each individual city we're working with. I've got a meeting tomorrow with a city that's got an insane amount of water loss. They didn't realize how much till they pulled their data. And so we've discussed using a couple different types of sensors and whatnot to help them identify where those locations may be. Because we can't find it in the field, which seems strange for the amount of water they're losing. But there's other methodologies we can utilize with remote sensing that can help potentially locate some of those areas. Or even, I&I trying to replicate some I&I studies without actually having to do smoke testing, right? Using a variety of sensors and equipment to detect some of those gases without having to go through the expense and the burden of hiring a specific smoke contractor out. So those are coming, but if a city calls, we can't promise we can do everything about everything, but every week it seems to be a new possibility that we're figuring out and kind of work through.
Yeah, I think that this is one of the concepts that is very intriguing about the remote sensing that we're doing in general, is to think about the AI and the machine learning that's out there right now. It all takes place within the digital world, right? And inside of a computer. But we're asking a computer to look at a real world situation, right? A physical thing. So somehow we got to convert that physical world into a way that a computer can see, those ones and zeros that it can see, that data, right? That's what the remote sensing allows us to do. It allows us to digitize the real world. And then once it's digitized in that high resolution, then we can start applying these machine learning and deep learning techniques to those digital models, right? That's the essence of what we're kind of doing here. As long as we can get it into a digital format, then we can apply these tools.
Well, guys, I'm super excited. I think you should come out to where I'm at now and go ahead and map the whole city. It's only 1 square mile, so it shouldn't take you too long.
We'd be happy to. Absolutely happy to.
I'm going to ask you to be deep one more time, but I'll start with Craig. Craig, 2 things. 1, tell us anything that we missed that you wanted to share with us. And 2, provide some just life advice or some encouragement for those busy public works directors that have too many hats that they're wearing and infrastructure that needs to be fixed and no money to do it. Tell them something uplifting.
Uplifting and nice. Well, I think the uplifting and nice is, the technology is coming and there's a lot of buzzwords that are scary, and it can be. And so the first thing is, just not to be scared, and we're here to help. Right. There are people that do want to help them. And, there are some companies that want to make this a revenue center, and they're looking at rate of return or, return on investment and whatnot. And I'm getting to run a relationship business. So there are people that care about them and want to use this in a manner that benefits them. And so I think that's out there. They have resources. They're not going to get left behind or stuck. And just the advice is, there's a lot of new things happening, a lot of new things coming. Not everything is for everybody. You don't have to do it all. But there are things that can be helpful, and there are people that want to help you.
Thank you. Dr. H, anything we missed? And tell some public works directors something that'll make them feel good today.
I could talk about this all day, so I don't know if there's anything we missed or whatnot. But yeah, just to kind of echo Craig as far as an uplifting message, there's people who are very passionate about this stuff. Unless you cut it, there'll be a section in here where I talked about how much I love looking at how thick walls are. If you have a problem, there's someone out there who actually, no matter how odd or kind of niche, someone's super into it. Here at BHC, we got a great team of people who are really into this type of stuff. They enjoy working with it. They're, energized by the challenge, and our clients don't have to know everything, and because we certainly don't either, but we can work through that with them. And so we're here to help that. And then I think, again, to kind of echo Craig, this technology is moving so fast, and I would say embrace it and give it a shot. We do see sometimes there's people who don't want to try the new thing. They want to keep doing the same thing that they've done over and over and over again. And while that is okay, trying something new and using a new technique, being open to that can open you up to other things as well. And you might find that that is something that you value and are interested yourself. You might enjoy it. So I would say just be open to trying something new.
Well, not only am I not going to cut out the wall thickness, because I think that's amazing. That might be a highlight. We might clip that out and release it in the short form just for everybody.
Oh boy.
Craig, can you tell everybody if they are interested in getting in contact with you guys for this or any other civil engineering information, some help? How do they get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, just send me an email. Email address is the letter C followed by my last name, Kerkhoff, and that's at bhcllp.com.
And that's your website too, bhcllp.com.
Yes, actually, and that got a refresh just last week, actually. The update for the first time since my birth, perhaps. So it's news fresh. It'll get a little better, but it's looking pretty good for what we're doing today.
I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes. We appreciate both you guys being on with us and educating us on the newest, latest, greatest to help cities out on the engineering side. To all the listeners, thanks for being with us, and thank you for what you do in your communities to improve people's lives. For more information about Clear Career Professionals and to see our active roles, check out clearcareerpro.com. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss anything, and we will catch you next time.